year
This conference will
2004.
now be recorded.
I can't remember that. I'm an engineer by training, and retired from the city of Syracuse as the commissioner of water, and prior to that, the city engineer in Syracuse. So I had an opportunity over the years to work with SMTC, to mention that, both as in my role as city engineer and as my prior role to that as a planner on the Regional Transportation Authority staff, back in the days when the site of the Center of Excellence had the the typewriter factory building.
I remember.
And in that building were the offices of the Regional Transportation Authority, and I had an office in there under the watchful eye of may rest in peace, Warren Frank.
Yeah.
So that kind of dates me, a little bit, but yeah, a lot of connections there. And so Barry is with us today, Barry Carr, and I'm gonna look at my notes here of what I accumulated about Barry, which wasn't much. So we hope to hear sort of a wide-ranging discussion about national electric vehicle infrastructure, plus the Justice 40 initiative. Hopefully Barry will also tell us a little bit about himself and his background, and this and what Clean Cities Coalition is, and all about. Barry is the coordinator for the program here in Central New York, which does outreach and is operated by the U.S. Department of Energy, and I guess began in 1993. So he's in charge of educating transportation officials and professionals on the use of alternative fuels and alternative fuel vehicles. He's been involved in this industry, according to his bio, since 1988. He works closely with state and federal government officials, developing programs. He has been the recipient of much accolades, and I got to just clear a pop-up. He's vice chair of the Northeast Gas Association, and although maybe that's changed, and he can fill us in. And he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Natural Gas Vehicle Association of America, and also named to the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities Hall of Fame, which is awesome. And really, I'm proud to say that glad to have Barry here with us today. He has attended many green bag lunches, but also and also annual meetings. He's probably has spoken before at green bag lunches, but I'm really glad he's here with us today to tell us what's going on in this very important moment in time for our planet. So Barry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, John, and Diane, and Kathy, and Baxter, and Scott, and Alex, and Megan, who just joined. So I'm here in the Syracuse University Center of Excellence, and it's kind of funny that John mentions it, because I certainly remember what was called Midtown Plaza, and before that was a typewriter factory. My predecessor, Joe Barry, that John, you and Diane and I were chatting about earlier, when he was young, he worked in the typewriter factory. So I'm going to say that was like in the late 40s, more likely than not. And I recall vividly coming down here on New Year's Day with my two young children, who are now 29 and 32, when they imploded the building. So I've been involved with the Center of Excellence since then. I actually used to have a cubicle next to Diane's for a couple of years here. And of course, I've attended a lot of your meetings that were being held in person right down the hallway. But just to let you know, I volunteer as the director of one of 78 sanctioned Clean Cities coalitions that are funded and supported partially by the U.S. Department of Energy. The program has had as many as 100 coalitions over the years. The Department of Energy is trying to consolidate a number of them, and they are going to celebrate their 30th anniversary later this year out at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado. So all 78 of us will be out there. I've been doing this for a long time, and there are right now 6 coalitions within New York State. So there's one in Buffalo, Rochester, here in Syracuse, Albany, New York City, and Long Island. We are in the process of consolidating our coalitions from 6 into 2, probably housed in New York City. I was at a meeting there yesterday, but there'll be an upstate division and a downstate division. So I will continue to be involved in the program. I will also share with you that I do this stuff as a volunteer, so I'm going to have to jump off and log on to something that I just need to log on to. But I work in the development world of electric vehicle infrastructure. So I work full time for a company called ABM. It's a giant company, 130,000 employees. So I want to thank them for allowing me the time to do this today. And we do things like I just submitted a bid to the post office to put in 200,000 charging stations. And we're putting in charging stations for UPS and FedEx and Amazon and people like that. So what I want to talk to you about today, though, is how this is going to happen in Central New York. And I should also mention that over the years, the Clean Cities program has changed its focus a number of times. When I started with the coalition 25 or 26 years ago here, the focus was on ethanol, growing corn to make ethanol, to extend the volume of gasoline, even though ethanol had less energy content than gasoline. So your fuel economy would go down, but you could extend the volume of gasoline that way. They went from ethanol to biodiesel. We continue to use biodiesel in some of the fleets here in Central New York, a vegetable-based substitute for diesel fuel. And then the government got everybody into natural gas. And while natural gas is a fossil fuel, it is much cleaner than diesel or gasoline. And fleets continue to utilize natural gas, including Centro, here our transit agency, but they're now using renewable natural gas. So rather than use a fossil-based fuel, they're using renewable natural gas that is recovered methane from landfills, animal waste, wastewater treatment plants. And in the last 2 years, they've shifted the focus again to electric and to hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. This presentation was originally a much longer presentation that was put on by the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, in conjunction with our coalition. And it's kind of a planning thing to ask you all questions. And that being said, I don't mind at any time if you want to either virtually raise your hand or just turn your microphone on and ask a question because this is meant to be interactive. This right. Okay. Is the slide advancing? There we go. What we're attempting to do is explain to you what's going on here in Central New York, because without any doubt, even though I've been doing this since 1988 and been involved in the electric vehicle world since then, it's really happening now. And already every company that makes light duty vehicles. So think of Ford and General Motors and Volvo and Hyundai and Kia and Toyota and Honda. They all have electric vehicle and plug-in hybrid vehicle programs. It's going to be quite a change as commercial vehicles start to become electric. And I mentioned that people like FedEx, UPS, and Amazon are all going electric over the next 3 to 5 years, along with the post office. And you'll see that this can make a lot of sense in many ways. There are still a lot of challenges on commercial vehicles, on bigger vehicles, and that's the kind of stuff I work on every day. But the point of all this is to come up with a plan. Don't be proactive about it. Don't be reactive, because you won't be happy if you're just reactive. I'm going to take a step back here and just make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. With an electric vehicle, right, which either comes in two types: a plug-in hybrid, which has an electric motor or motors, along with an internal combustion engine, and a plug-in hybrid can typically go anywhere from 20 miles to maybe 50 miles. I drive a plug-in hybrid on a daily basis. So during the week, if I'm not traveling, I don't buy any gas at all. And if I have to take a long trip, I make an effort to stay at a hotel that has a charger so I can charge overnight. But if I have to buy gas, I can still get by on having one primary vehicle. So there are 3 ways to charge those vehicles. Level 1 charging is essentially an intelligent extension cord. And if you plug that in at home or elsewhere, just a 120 volt circuit, you would add 3 to 5 miles of range to your vehicle in an hour. And that actually works for some people who have a very short commute. What's more popular now is level 2 charging. Diane, you mentioned, I think you have one in your garage. I have one in my garage. Think of this as like a dryer circuit or a range circuit. It's 208 to 240 volts. And depending on the output of the charger, you can add between 12 to 80 miles of range in an hour. My car is plugged in right now out in the parking lot. I can see it from here at the Center of Excellence at a charger that adds about 20 miles of range in an hour. And then you're starting to see pop up along highways and at toll road rest areas, what's called DC fast charging. DC fast charging is for battery electric vehicles only, not plug-in hybrids, but battery electric vehicles. You're all familiar with the Tesla. Tesla did a good job of setting up their own network, but now the rest of the world is catching on. So people with Mustang Mach-E's and Nissan Leafs and Chevy Bolts and Kia E6s and vehicles of that nature can now stop at a thruway rest area or a rest area on Route 81, plug their vehicle in, and can add in range anywhere from 75 miles to 1,200 miles on some of these superchargers that are being built for over-the-road heavy-duty trucks. What's typically being built along the thruway, and if you ever want to take a field trip, you can go out to the DeWitt rest area. There are 4 DC fast charge units there. There are 150 kW output. If you were to plug your Chevy Bolt into that, you would add 100 miles of range in about 12 minutes. So that's how quick it can be here. And that's for people who are going to be traveling long distance. Hey, Chris Carrick, I see you asked a question here. Unmute yourself and share that. There we go.
Hey, Barry.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, this is a good statement.
I just wanted to point folks to our webpage where we've got a lot of good information on EVs and all the grant programs that are available for folks. So just pointing that out.
And to everyone else, Chris, who is a board member of our coalition. Chris took part in this planning session that we did a few weeks ago with the NFPA people. So thank you for that, Chris. I'm also, Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot right now to talk about other stuff that the Regional Planning and Development Agency is up to related to electric vehicles, because I'm logging into a webinar. I'll be back in 1 minute.
Okay. Well, we've helped a number of municipalities install charging stations, over 15, and we're talking with many at the moment because the DEC has a funding program that can cover almost all of the cost of the equipment. And they can also participate in National Grid's Make Ready program, which covers about 90% of the infrastructure costs. So if there are any upgrades to electric service panels or conduit that needs to be laid, the National Grid program to cover that.
How is everyone? I'm on the phone too, so I'm going to click.
Yeah, so Chris, these programs are can be aimed at a residential owner?
No, these are not for homeowners. There is a state tax credit for homeowners, but municipalities as non-tax-paying entities can get the tax credit. So when we talk to municipalities, we talk about the National Grid program and the utility program. If anyone has a commercial business, they can participate in the National Grid program, and they're actively looking for parking lots in other locations that would be good for charging.
Yeah, and there's also, Chris, I'm back now for a while. I took advantage of the state tax credit because I put it through my own business when I put my charger in at my house. And I also took the federal tax credit of 30% for electric vehicle infrastructure. They get it as a business credit. And of course, tax credits are not available to tax exempt organizations or municipalities. But there are other ways to do this. And I'll tell you some programs we're working on right now. There's a NYSERDA program that involves vouchers for larger commercial vehicles. So if you work, if you work for the Village of Tully and you have any class 4 or above, so think about a work truck or a shuttle bus, there are grants available for that through the truck voucher program through NYSERDA, which functions as our state energy office. And there's a DEC program, Chris, that you've been involved with for a while, and I guess they have a little bit of money again, because I know they're accepting applications from towns through September 30th that will pay a percentage of costs of a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle along with level 2 charging. And NYSERDA's workplace charging program, which ran out of money about a year ago, has been funded again. They have a new contractor running it, and it is scheduled to start, I believe, October 1st. So we'll make sure we get all that information out to everyone on that. Baxter, I see a question here for you. In terms of electric vehicles, is there a focus on expanding infrastructure for bikes and scooters? Well, I'm not aware of that either. The biker scooter pretty much would be charged off of a 120 volt outlet. And unfortunately, the bikes and scooters don't use the same receptacle that you see right here that is used on a car. So unless there's some sort of adapter that's put together, I don't see that happening. And you're also right that there's not grants for e-bikes or electric scooters right now. Does that answer that? Dedicated lanes and paths, there are some of those. Actually, Chris, you know more about that than I do. We have bike lanes here in Syracuse.
Yeah, I imagine there's funding through various, state and federal transportation programs. I would say that the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council, which is our region's MPO.
Yeah, there's someone here. There's someone here from the MTC.
Oh, I see Megan Vatelli's on the call. I don't want to call her out, but SMTC would be a good place to look into in terms of how that federal money gets spent in the region.
Well, that's good. All right. Hey, I'm going to go back to this. So anyhow, Chris had seen some of this. We're not showing videos because we haven't figured out how to do that yet. But the NFPA is a national nonprofit, and they've been doing lots and lots of good work to plan for all the infrastructure that's going to be needed. For the newer electric vehicles, they're putting together manuals, and we're going to host this fall a training session for first responders, so emergency responders, which would be firefighters, ambulance companies, tow truck drivers. Those people need to know how to deal with an accident that has an electric vehicle or a battery powered vehicle, or at some point a hydrogen powered vehicle versus a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle. And the fires can be very effectively fought, but you have to know how to do it. And when we started this, Diane and John and I were chatting. There was a video out about a month ago of a bus that caught fire, an electric bus in Connecticut. And just so you know, internal combustion vehicles catch on fire so often that it doesn't make the news anymore. But if something new, like an electric vehicle or a natural gas trash truck or a natural gas powered bus catches on fire, it becomes big news. The fire department where it happened was not trained on how to respond to it. So they basically kept everybody away and just let it burn. So thankfully no one was hurt, but these vehicles can be foamed. You can dump water on them, but it has to be literally dumped, not put on with a hose. Because as you can imagine, water is a very good conductor. And if you are running a hose on an electric vehicle that's on fire, if for any reason the circuit is active, that current could go up and shock the person holding the hose. So they definitely need to be trained. Let's skip this one. What I want to talk about though is how we as a community need to work together to have the transition to zero emission electric vehicles be successful. So you just heard me mention first responders and tow truck drivers, right? Auto dealerships are going to have training. The company that I work for, ABM, provides chargers for the majority of the commercial auto dealerships in the United States. Government certainly has to be involved because it's going to be, well, two reasons. One, it's a good idea. And the second, it's going to be a mandate in New York State. Already, Governor Hochul has mandated that school districts from 2027 on only purchase electric school buses. So there's a lot of incentives going on right now to encourage the districts to do it in advance. And if I was ever to warn somebody about something, I would warn you to take advantage of the incentives, because when these programs become mandates, the incentives often go away. So the right thing to do, in my opinion, as a taxpayer, is that the district, as they replace their buses over a period of years, start looking at doing it right away. We also need to train installers of the electric vehicle charging stations. We need to train and put information together for codes officials. So There's going to be codes established. An electric vehicle charger is an appliance. So, but if it's installed commercially, it has to have its own separate disconnect. It has to be on a separate circuit breaker. If it's in a public lot, it has to have a bollard in front of it so a snowplow doesn't hit it or a car doesn't hit it. We have to work very closely with utilities because quite often the utilities have to upgrade the power to a building. Chris Carrick mentioned earlier that, you know, the utility here, get back to this, National Grid has a very nice program that's called Make Ready. So if it's in a place where it benefits a lot of people, like maybe the parking lot here at the Center of Excellence, they will upgrade at their cost, anywhere from 50 to 80%. I've seen a couple done at 100%, the cost of the upgrading power to the facility. So if you're a municipality or any other kind of public or private entity, I would seek out your utility representative. Insurance adjusters have to figure out how to deal with electric vehicles when battery packs have to be replaced. And finally, vehicle technicians have to be trained. The good news is there's a lot less parts in an electric vehicle than there is in an internal combustion vehicle, but still technicians need to know math. They need to all have laptops, and I think they pretty much do now at this point anyhow. I actually made a presentation at SUNY Morrisville back in the spring to their auto tech department, and those kids are ready to deal with this. Baxter, there's a good question you just asked. Is there an effort to bring back car sharing in this area? I'm not aware of one in Syracuse. I was very aware of the Q-Car car share program because through our coalition, we provided plug-in Prius vehicles for that. The reason that went away is the insurance industry in New York State. The insurance cost of a car share program is super expensive because background checks aren't always done. Someone could literally sign up for a car share program and then lose their driver's license for some reason and go out and still take a car and drive it. So it's a huge liability. However, I will tell you that there's a very successful car share program in Ithaca. And that program that started with small internal combustion vehicles and then went to Toyota Priuses has now been purchasing Chevy Bolts, and they've gotten several grants to put in level 2 charging. So they're making it work. It's a nonprofit, but it does cover its costs. Does that answer that question, Baxter? So what I wanted to accomplish on this is go through these priorities and maybe explain some of this stuff to you a little better. This question came up, and Chris, you'll remember this. You know, how do we equitably distribute the cost of upgrading the grid? If you're watching the news, you'll see in California with their record heat they've had this week and the fires, they've actually asked people to not charge their vehicles. And that's kind of a very negative connotation where they want to incentivize you and get you to use an electric vehicle and then tell you not to use the charger. So it is important. The grid will have to be upgraded there, and in the end, the ratepayers will have to pay for it. So there's all sorts of proposals from the Public Service Commission on how to do this equitably. Our coalition here in Syracuse is one of 30 that's been involved in this J40 initiative. And what that stands for is Justice 40. And what Justice 40 means is that of these two new federal programs, what was called the Infrastructure Act, which we call BIL in in government speak, and what's called the Build Back Better plan, which is now called the IRA plan. Those two programs have a mandate that 40% of the funds are going to be spent in low-income communities, rural communities, tribal communities, and environmental justice communities. So our coalition here is putting together a program to do outreach, and most certainly we're gonna want to get Greening USA to assist us in that effort. So in your community, we talk about making a plan. Each person, whether it's a city, whether it's a county, whether it's a village, whether it's a town, should put together a plan clearly stating what your own goals are. You should come to people like myself and Chris, who can tell you what incentives are available and help guide you through the process to get those incentives. We can talk about the logistics of doing this. The logistics are finding the vehicles, finding the chargers, because I'll tell you, the EV charging industry is also suffering from supply chain issues, just like the vehicle industry is. And then finally, you should make sure that your plan is sustainable, and not just sustainable by being green and clean, but sustainable that you can actually do it, that you have the support and you know where you can get the funding to do all of these projects. I also want to go through, here's some of the existing funding that's here right now. The EPA funding program is specifically for school districts, and the first $500 million closed in August, and they're going to announce the districts that applied for funding for up to 25 school buses and chargers in that's a national program. There is a Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust program that we are involved with. State of New York has $172 million in funds that go into various pots of money for electric vehicles, natural gas vehicles, propane vehicles, and fuel cell vehicles, and the necessary infrastructure. NESCOM, which is a Northeast regional program, has funding for electric vehicles. DARA, which stands for Diesel Emission Reduction Act, has funding for electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. The Department of Energy has a FOA out, and again, more government speak, but FOA stands for Funding Opportunity Assistance, I think is what it's called. We applied for one of those on behalf of one of our stakeholders to put in a publicly available fast charge energy island, we're calling it. It's out in Western New York, proposed, so stay tuned for that. Our own website, which we try to update on a monthly basis, is a good source of information for this. And then finally, states across the country have recently had to send in what's called a NEVI plan, which is a National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. The long and short of this is that the designated interstates, and here in Central New York, our designated interstates include Route 81, Interstate 90, the thruway. If you go further south, Interstate 86. And then if you go to the east, Interstate 87, that goes from Montreal down to New York City. Those are all designated alternative fuel ready highways, which means that funding is going to be available to put fast charging every 50 miles on either side of those interstates. So we're working right now with a truck stop company, and I guess I can say who it is. It's Love's. Love's plans to host, Love's and some other truck stop companies plan to host these electric vehicle charging sites. In my mind, that's a very good place to do this because they have amenities in there. They have restaurants, they have Wi-Fi, they have bathrooms, they have stores, and they're well lit and they're open 24 hours a day. I will share an anecdote that another Clean Cities Coalition did a coast-to-coast EV run, and it was two women, the coalition director and one of her interns, and they drove from Connecticut to California over a period of 5 days in an electric Mustang Mach-E, and they were able to find charging all the way along, but they said they were in some areas where they felt a bit frightened because they weren't well-lit areas. So we're making sure whoever applies for this funds is also putting in state-of-the-art lighting and putting in cameras so people can feel safe about this. Everybody understand that, how that's going to work? Well, I'm assuming you do.
Barry,
sure.
just reiterate that, you know, in terms of those interstate corridors.
Yeah.
So there will be a private sector partner that
Right, John.
will install those off the interstates or on the interstates and in rest stops.
It'll be a combination of both, and something we've learned right away is that in some other states, it's against the law to have refueling on the interstate of any kind. New York's not one of those states, but how the legislation reads is that the chargers have to be located within a mile of those interstates. So you're going to see them at truck stops. You're going to see them. A great place to see one is the Morabito family, right? A local family from the southern tier that operates, I think, 66 convenience stores. They have a brand new Morabito store on Brighton Ave, right off of Route 81, and it has 6 DC fast chargers at it, and it is well lit and open 24 hours a day. And it has, I think, either a Blimpie or a Subway inside. So you can go in and sit down and eat while your vehicle is being charged for 15 or 20 minutes. So you're going to see it like that. And if you drive down south, you'll see them at Wawa's that you see in large convenience stores when you get into Jersey and Pennsylvania. Sheetz, another big chain. They're all looking at doing this.
Yeah. So these places will take the place of gas stations. You know, I guess
they'll be both for a while, right?
Yeah.
Gas isn't going away overnight. That's for certain.
Right. Right. I mean, I suppose it's, you know, just the logistics problem of how many vehicles can get charged at one of these electric gas stations. It sounds to me a little mind-boggling in terms of, you know, like now you can pull up to a gas pump and you can fill it up, and you know, in a couple of minutes and beyond, you can handle how many cars, you know, hundreds of cars and you know, at a time. But at one of these stations, it's going to be a little different, right?
Right. And these people, you know, if you look at this slide right now, right? What can I do now? What can I do next month? What can I do in 6 months? What can I do in a year? In your plan, if you're going to be upgrading power to a facility, I tell people, if you're in a public parking lot and you're going to put in charging, level 2 charging, you should immediately be looking at 20% of the spots, but you should, in long term, maybe if you dig up the parking lot, you should put the conduit in for 60% of the spots. So you don't have to dig the parking lot up again, because every vehicle company is now making electric vehicles. You have another mandate coming up that started in California, but it's also a mandate in New York State that the vehicle manufacturers are only going to be able to sell electric light duty vehicles in 2035. Now, it's entirely possible that that could get pushed further out, but 2035 is 13 years away, right? And so if you're going to be around for 13 years, you should be planning on, at some point, this is going to be 100%. I'll call out my landlord here, Syracuse University. I don't think they've done an adequate job of planning. They're already having students who are coming back and they have electric cars, and they only have, I believe, 2 charging stations on campus right now. So they're going to need a lot more charging stations. So things like that should all go into your plan. This is my contact information, right? And you all know me, most of you do, because I've been doing this so long. But I do return phone calls and I do respond to emails. And I also wanted to let you know that we now have a program manager here who does a lot of this stuff, Veronica Kaysen, and that is her email, their info@ccofcny.com. And she kind of filters things for me, and we try to meet 2 or 3 times a week. So this is all happening, and I guess this is a time where, you know, let's open it up to people. Does anyone have a specific question? Does anyone want to talk about a specific issue that they might have as a planner or as a town or as a developer?
Yeah, before everybody talks at once, I'll just say there's a small group. If you just unmute yourself and raise your question, that will probably work. If you prefer to put in the chat to be recognized, either you have a question or write your question, you can do that too. But yeah, we're a small group, so we can kind of open it up a little bit. And while we have Barry here for a little while longer, let's ask him some questions.
I have a question. It's just out of curiosity, what % of vehicle greenhouse gas emissions come from private passenger cars as opposed to commercial vehicles? Do you have that kind of information?
Yeah, I actually have access to that, and I'm going to see if I can remember it properly, and Chris might know it too. I think it's about 12% come from consumer vehicles, which would be light duty, and about 20% comes from commercial vehicles, which are going to be everything from box trucks to transit vehicles to tractor trailers. And but the very good news is cars and even trucks, even diesel vehicles, are way cleaner than they were 10 years ago. So they've made some amazing strides, but it's going to be a huge leap when they go to electric, because not only are there not going to be tailpipe emissions, right? Even though there's emissions from making the electricity, there's no doubt about that. The electric vehicle is at a minimum twice as efficient as an internal combustion vehicle. So it can be 2 to 3 times as efficient depending what vehicle you're driving, because you don't have a transmission, you don't have heat losses, right? So you have regenerative braking. So in every case, even if you're making your electricity from coal, the overall emissions of an electric vehicle are less than an internal combustion vehicle.
Okay, that's interesting, because I would have guessed that it was private passenger vehicles that were, a bigger impact, but
Yeah.
interesting to know that
I'll
it's
fact
actually.
check myself. I'll fact check myself on that, Diane, because I do have access to it. I just saw it the other day too. But,
I used to live and work in
older.
Los Angeles, and I would have guessed passenger vehicles.
Well, and when you live there, you lived there when the air was brown some mornings, right?
Oh,
It was
yeah.
literally brown. Yeah.
Yes, 1970s, it was horrible. Absolutely terrible. You know, you couldn't breathe.
It's pretty amazing. How about anybody else?
Barry, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
We're talking to a lot of municipalities right now about the DEC grant program that's open for a few more weeks. And we always get asked the questions, you know, should we charge users for plugging in to a charging station that we install? And, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But just in terms of dollars and cents, my feeling is it's probably not worth the cost of tracking all of usage, and you know, you're gonna have to pay the provider of the software, you know, a fee to do all of that billing for you. Is that kind of what you're seeing out there?
I would say yes and no. So if Chris, what you're going to provide is level 2 charging that's relatively low output, like a 4 kW output charger, in your municipality, it's probably simpler to just give it away. But if it's a higher output, like these 12, 14, the post office thing I sent in last week, are 19.2 kilowatt hour kW chargers. People do charge for that, and how they do it on the workplace side is for their own internal vehicles, it's free, right? The company is going to pick up the cost of it. For the employee vehicles, they're billing them their actual electricity rate, right? So whatever it costs them, and let's say it's 15 cents a kilowatt hour, they're allowing them to charge, but they're not giving them the fuel, because that becomes an issue with the people who haven't bought an electric vehicle yet, because you're not giving them gasoline. And then visitors can charge, but at a premium. So maybe the visitor's going to pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour for their electricity, and that allows the host entity to gain some revenue for that. The number of vehicles doing it right now aren't enough that they can make money off of it, but in 3 or 4 or 5 years, there'll be enough electric vehicles and a utilization factor. That the companies that do this for free right now, companies like Blink, that if it's a good location, they may put in a charger for free. They claim that they need a 30% utilization factor in order to break even on that. So 30% of 24 hours, somebody's got to be plugged in there, pulling electrons out of it.
Yeah, that's a pretty high utilization rate.
Yeah, it is for now. It is
Yeah.
for now, but
Yeah.
You know, we have high utilization here at the Center of Excellence because the charger's free, right? But when they start charging people, we have people who come in here who don't work here, because you see them plug in the morning and then walk away, and they work across the street or they work downtown or something. It's pretty easy through PlugShare, which is a phone app, right? It will tell you how you pay for the charger, and it will also tell you the places where the chargers are free.
So just a quick follow-up. We see charging stations, you know, charging users 50 cents or more even per kilowatt hour, which seems awfully high to me.
That's high.
Is there any good data on like what's the sweet spot in terms of, you know, if you charge too much, people just won't use the station?
Depends how badly they need it. I'll give you a real world example. They're charging 30 cents a kilowatt hour at JFK Airport right now for fast charge, because, you know, they not only pay, they have to cover the cost of the electricity and also the demand charges, because, you know, these are, I think they're 175 kW chargers there in the cell phone lot. If you get much higher than that, only elite people will pay for it. And I know that ABM, who I'm listening to over on my other computer right now on their call, they run the chargers at LAX out in Los Angeles, and they have time of use pricing. So if you go into the airport parking garage, there's an app, and when you check in, it directs you to the slot where there's an existing charger, where there's an available charger, and it knows how long you're going to be there. And as soon as you plug in, it knows that if you need 30 kilowatt hours of electricity, you want it, and you're going to be there for 3 days, you want it in the middle of the night when it's cheapest. Yet, if your trip changes, you can update it through the app and say, hey, I'm coming home tonight and I need my car charged, and I don't care what it costs. So they'll pay a premium for that. People are willing to do that. So it's like, it's demand pricing, just like you see for a football ticket or a concert ticket, right?
It seems, I guess, counterproductive to allow somebody to leave their car parked for 3 days at a charger. How do you avoid that situation?
That's pretty easily done too. So if I leave my car charged and hooked up here at the Center of Excellence, when my vehicle is completely charged, I get a text that says, hey, you're almost completely charged. You should consider moving your vehicle so somebody else could use it. In New York City, in Manhattan, at their level 2 charging, you get a message that says your vehicle is completely charged. You have 30 minutes to move it, or we're going to start charging you $30 an hour to stay there. So they charge a very, very high rate in order to get people to move their vehicles.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting. A set of problems with this whole transition.
That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
So if somebody's flying out of town for 3 days, their car's at a charger for 3 days?
Yes, it is. But they're going to have, when that job's completed, it's over 4,000 chargers. 80% of the parking spots are being electrified because it's California. So there's lots of chargers. I will tell you that I took the train to New York Tuesday, and I plugged in at the train station, and I got back, I went Wednesday and I got back yesterday, and my car was still plugged in. There were 5 stations there. I was the only car plugged into a station.
And although as this catches on, it seems like that's going to become a problem.
Yeah, so they're going to want to change that. They're going to want to say that you're limited to a certain amount. I was in a parking garage in Washington a couple of weeks ago where there was 3, I think it cost $20 to park in there for a day. You could plug into a charger if it was available for free for 3 hours, but you had to, they were going to start charging you $20 an hour if you didn't move your car after 3 hours.
Wow.
So there are ways to do it. But it's in its infancy. This industry is truly in its infancy still.
Wow. A lot of things to think about.
So,
Are there any other thoughts, questions before we say thank you to Barry and wish him a good weekend?
wish me to my next meeting.
Their next meeting. So yeah, I don't see anybody lighting up. I see Chris is still lit up as your mic is on, but I presume you're all set, Chris. He turned off.
Yeah, Chris, if you leave your mic on, people are going to ask you questions.
Yeah. So Barry, thanks for doing this. It was a great presentation to hear about this. Very interesting. Very interesting. We really appreciate you doing this.
All right, everyone. Take care and have a
Thanks for
wonderful
everyone
weekend.
for being here. Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.